Karen from Countyfairgrounds USA, countyfairgrounds.net. Welcome to today's podcast.
I have Dr. Stephen Snyder on the line with me, the tax magician.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
Hi, Dr. Snyder. You're quite an unusual character. My first concern about you is, what is your doctorate in? I'm curious.
I have a doctorate in business administration. I have a master's in business administration, and my bachelor's degree is in accounting.
Okay, that sounds like it makes you pretty well qualified to be a tax magician.
I hope so.
All right, I understand, too. One of my entertainers told me that you used to do an act. Could you tell me a little bit about it? I'm curious.
Sure. From about the age of 15 until I turned, I want to say 65, I was a performing magician, a balloon artist, and I instructed in classes in magic and ballooning.
Ballooning. Now I understand why I got the referral from my balloon guy from you.
I have been to several of their conventions. The thing about taxes and marketing and networking and all the things that I lecture about and write about, they fit anybody.
Of course they do. But, you know, I, as Countyfairgrounds.net person, I know that the entertainers, they're awfully stressed, and especially right now. But, you know, they get what they're doing that they don't think about these other things.
They don't. This is the sad part about conventions. Too many conventions, and I'll speak specifically of the magic conventions right now, but too many of them, they want to teach the newest, latest, greatest magic tricks. I teach how to grow your business. I've spent years putting multi-$100 effects into my closet, never to come out again, because I didn't know how to market myself to use them properly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so when I lived in Chicago and we were forming a Chicago chapter of Cadabra, that was one of the things that occurred to me quickly. As entertainers, clowns, magicians, jugglers, mimes, stilt walkers, balloonists, face painters, and ad nauseum, we do what we do better than other people, which is why we keep doing it. Nobody ever taught us how to run a business. Mm-hmm. That's where I came in.
I think you entertainers do what you do, too, because you really, really like doing it.
Well, we do. I mean, any job worth doing is worth doing well. And we know that, you know, different audiences react differently to the same effects we've been doing forever. I try to help people grow what they already have so they don't have to invest more into newest, greatest, latest, unless it fits who they are. Right now, I've talked to several people about ideas, things they can do right now that will help them in the future when all this mess is over.
Yeah, it's pretty much of a mess. One of the problems I've had with the entertainers is they don't know how to resize images. They'll send me images or they'll post images on our site and they're like way huge, and you know, it
can be a problem. Yes.
Yes, it's frustrating. So okay, so now how did you manage to make the transition? Well, you get all those doctorates though. So you were a magician for all those years, and all of a sudden you became a tax guy?
No. I've always been interested in taxes. My philosophy is never give the government a penny more than they should have. And even then, maybe not that one. And the tax code says the same thing. You only have to pay the least amount of tax you owe. The problem was, unless you went to someone who charged you an arm and a leg, you didn't know what the least amount was. Filling out the tax paperwork is really not difficult, and there are many, many software programs that make it so easy that I'd rather spend $100 on a tax program than $300 to go to somebody who works for, say, Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block or any of the others, or even come to me. Not that I can do taxes; I'm no longer licensed to do taxes. But I can tell people what goes on what line. In fact, I have a book that tells them what goes on what line. And I just finished a book on making financial record keeping so easy that you know what goes on what line, and you don't need to go to a $300 guy.
Good. Because I'm telling you right now, we have, and I'm sure you know, that there's a lot of entertainers that are in big, deep doo-doo right now.
All right, so let me tell your listeners a couple of ideas that will help them for, well, not so much for right now. It'll give them something to do for right now and benefit them later. We know sooner or later this garbage is going to end and places are going to start to open back up. So I would look at places that need to attract volumes of people. For example, car dealerships. They need to be able to sell cars. So start contacting the general manager at your local car dealerships now and ask them very nicely in a letter, when this is over, are you planning on having a family day where you have hot dogs and stuff to bring, to bring the families in? And if you do, please consider using me as whatever it is you do. If you're a clown, if you're a face painter, if you're a magician, if you're a balloon artist. Now, what's the worst that could happen is they'll say no. Well, if you don't ask them, they've already said no. But if you do ask them, if they weren't thinking about it, now you've put the idea into their head. And it doesn't have to start with car dealerships. I live in Las Vegas. Every hotel has friends and family days. So do most big corporations. How about the city that you live in hosting something in a park? Welcome back to the world. Whatever you want to call it. Your idea, your letter, you put the idea in their heads, and you just may get the call.
Okay. All right. So are you a family man? I'm just curious.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, then you've had to support your family all this time. I see you've been writing books. How did that get started?
It started because it goes back to the days in Chicago. The name actually came about, tax magician name. I was talking to a friend who owned the Clown Marketing Institute. She and I were on the phone, and as happens, she's asking me for some tax strategies, which I'm explaining to her on the phone. And she said, you really are a tax magician. And the name stuck. So I want people to know that coming to my website, calling me and asking me questions, utilizing any of my services, it's not all about taxes. However, if you use my book on cold calling and it starts to increase your business, it's about taxes. If you use my book on networking and it starts to bring in more business, it's about taxes. If you want to use the book on branding and it brings in more business, it's about taxes. So it kind of all comes back to that. And again, never pay a penny more than you should. Don't be afraid of them. What are they going to do? Audit you? Let them.
Well, there's a lot of things I could say to that.
Yes, I know, but we don't say those things, yes.
Okay, so how many books have you published?
Right now there are 13. The 14th book goes out after the first. I'm writing the 15th, and I have a title for the 16th, but haven't started putting it together yet. I've been known to write more than one book at a time, which makes my wife crazy because she doesn't know I keep them straight in my head. I am almost 100% I am self-published, and there's a new dealer coming into the Las Vegas area. I understand he's a website dealer. Dealing through his website, who already has permission to carry my books. But the best way to get them is you go to my website, and they're all listed there. I charge nothing for postage, so it's whatever the book costs. But the new book, the one that is coming out next week, is the book on financial record keeping.
Okay, I'm a little confused. You're so much into this tax stuff. How did you get to be a magician? Why didn't you go straight into the tax stuff?
I suppose at 15 years old, it really you don't think a whole lot about taxes. And at the time, I wasn't really making any money to pay taxes on. It was later in life, but that I actually wrote the book. However, I served in the Army for 10 years, and for most of those 10 years, whatever unit I was assigned to, I was the tax guy for that unit. The guys could come to me to get tax work done. And I told them hey, I'll do the tax work for you. I'll sit down with you. We'll get it all done. You're the one who's going to sign the return, not me. And to the best of my knowledge, in all the years I've done this, only one person has ever been audited, and they won the audit.
You know, you sort of lost me a little bit. At 15 years old, you were interested in magic. So somewhere along the line, you had to go to college, and you were in the service. When did you go to college?
I actually went to college. I started before I went into the service, and I was not a good student. I can tell you, my high school class my high school class was 500. I was 253rd. I mean, you know, I believed in grab the bottom and hold on to it for dear life. I was a horrible, horrible student. After so I was drafted into the Army, and I served for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to my father, whose opinion I have always respected, and I didn't know what to do, because if I took one more enlistment, then I was going to have to stay for 20 years. It wouldn't make any sense any other way. And so he said, so, you know, if you take that enlistment, you'll stay. And I said, what will you do 10 years from now when you get out of the service? I said, well, I want to go back to school and get my bachelor's degree. He said, okay, very good idea. What will you do if you get out of the service now? Excuse me. And I said, I'll go to college and get my degree. He said, so why are you putting off college for 10 years? So I got out of the service, all right? I got out of the service, and I went to school. I can even tell you the name of the school I went to. It was in California. And I got my bachelor's degree in accounting. It took me, I took classes while I was in the service, but most of them didn't amount to very much. It wasn't until I got an associate's degree in dental science through the military. I've already got all my lab work done. All my sciences are finished. So I only needed 2 more years of school, and I got my bachelor's degree.
Dental?
And I can honestly say
dental?
I did dental. Yes, that was my specialty dental. In the service, dental.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so
okay.
After the bachelor's degree, I said, I want to do something for me, not for somebody else. And I started on a program for my master's degree from California Coast College. And then after I finished that, I went on to get my doctorate. Mm-hmm. But I was always interested. I always helped entertainers and others understand the complexity of their taxes. I made it very simple for them to understand.
That's good, because a lot of these entertainers, they have a real hard time. They think about what they're doing. They think about what they're doing, and they just, they're like out in La La Land. So
it's a whole new skill set. They would rather pay somebody $300 or more to get the taxes done. What they don't understand, don't realize, when they go and I used to work for Jackson Hewitt, so I'm going to use Jackson Hewitt as my example. When someone comes to me that is self-employed, they have to bring me a summary of their income and expenses from their self-employment. Mm-hmm. All right? That's all you need to do your taxes. You've already done the work. All they had to do is put the right numbers onto the right line of the page. That was it. Mm-hmm. That charged you $300 for that. Why don't you do it? If you don't know what number or what line it goes on, well, that's where my tax book comes in. It tells you exactly what goes onto what line, and sometimes what doesn't go onto that line. The worst you can do is make a mistake, which doesn't matter because it's the total expenses that get subtracted from the total income.
Okay. So what was the first book you wrote, and how long is it?
Okay, the first book I actually wrote was the no-cost marketing book, and it was about 8 pages long, and I still have it because people want to know, how can you market yourself when you have no money? And when I say no money, I said I didn't have money to buy paper, I didn't have money to buy stamps, I didn't have money to buy envelopes, and I had to market myself. Mm-hmm. And I successfully did so.
Well, you know what I tell my entertainers? I tell them, get on the phone and call. Do not send emails. There are a gazillion emails that come. I must delete about 1,000 emails a day.
I used a fax machine. Same difference. I picked the market I wanted to go to, and I would call them up because you can get a listing. Listings are easy. You can get them off of the computer. You can get a directory listing, say, of every preschool within 200 miles of where you live, and the book explained the technique I used to do that. And I would call them. There were 10 on a page. I would start with the first one on the page, and I had a 6-line maybe sales pitch because they don't want to hear a sales pitch. Hi, my name is Steve Snyder. I'm a local area family entertainer. I have a program I think you might be interested in. May I please have your fax number? If they gave me, right, if they gave me the fax number, they gave me permission to send a fax.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if they said, well, can you mail us something? I said, no, this is a time-limited offer, and it only works with a fax machine. Can I please have your fax number? Well, we don't have one. Thank you very much. I went on to the next call. When I finished the page, however many I had, that's how many I sent out. Then I'd go to the second page. So they were getting, I didn't have to wait till I finished a whole day's worth of calling, and maybe today I only felt like making those 10 calls.
One of the reasons that I interview people, entertainers, is because it gives them exposure, and it gives them a different kind of exposure. A lot of these entertainers, they can do these performances, but they can't talk. Have you noticed that?
Well, let's again. So in my cold calling book, I talk about a elevator speech, and I talk about basically the same 6 lines or 4 lines, whatever it was that I just gave you. You don't have to say. You're not trying to sell yourself. When I wanted to start working with park districts, teaching classes in the upper Illinois area, there were 13 counties across the top of Illinois, and I called all 13 counties, every park district I could find, and it was the same thing. My name is Steve Snyder. I have programs I think you would be interested in. Is there a time when we can get together? I'm finished talking.
Mm-hmm.
It's either a yes or a no. I'm not saying, how's Tuesday morning or Wednesday afternoon? Is there a time we can get together? They'd either say yes or no. If they said no, I thanked them and went on to the next one. If they said, well, I'm very busy, well, that's great. It could be next week or the week after.
Okay.
But
what was your second book?
The second book was the tax book, The Self-Employed Entertainer's Complete Guide to Federal Income Tax. The book was reviewed for one of the major magic organizations. It was reviewed by a CPA, and the only thing he found wrong with my book is he didn't like my title. He thought
How many pages?
So 300 pages. He thought the title should not have had the word complete. And I said, it is complete for self-employed individuals who fill out a Schedule C. I'm not talking to corporations. And it's the self-employed. All self-employed people must do a Schedule C. This takes you line by line by line on a Schedule C and tells you what can or cannot go on that line all the way through. It even has tax forms in the book. Yeah.
I'm curious, how many entertainers do you personally work with right now?
Right now, I work with about a half a dozen entertainers. And others. Not everybody I work with is an entertainer. People who've been coming to me to get taxes done for quite some time. People who will call me just to ask a question or two, or write to me just to ask me a question or two. There's got to be over 100 of those. Well over 100 of those, because it's like you go to the email and it's tax question. Fine, I'll call them up. I want to I don't necessarily want to write it. I'll pick up a phone and call people. I'm old that way. I like to talk to people.
Right, that's the best way to handle it.
Yes.
Okay, so what advice would you give these people right now that are having a really hard time and might be in unemployment?
Think ahead. Somewhere along the line in your past, you had to get your very first show. What did you do to get the show? Is it repeatable now? And how many times can you repeat it? Start looking at agencies and organizations that are going to need you when this is done. Even if they don't know they're going to need you, you put the idea into their head. If you're unemployment, life is tough. And I got to tell you, unemployment is taxable. Life is going to be difficult. Sooner or later, this whole thing is going to be done. Look at low-budget marketing ideas. Look at no-cost marketing ideas. I hate to put it this way because they're my books, but sometimes you got to invest a little bit of money to get the big payoff at the end. I don't know any magician that hasn't put tricks into the closet and never used them.
That's interesting.
Well, the problem is, yeah, go ahead.
What's your favorite book that you wrote?
The one I haven't written yet.
That's kidding.
Yeah, you know what? Each book is so unique. Each book was a labor of love. I want to say that, all 13 of them. Or 14, because like I said, the 14th comes out next week. Almost every book on my shelf came about because somebody asked me a question. Mm-hmm. So I would go to an event. In fact, I've got World Crown Association is coming up in March. All right, I will be lecturing. I will be selling. Someone will ask me a question that I'm happy to answer, but in the back of my head, it may be, there's a new book here.
Okay, so they can buy these books on your website?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I do not charge for postage, so they can just go and order the book.
That's cool.
Right? I accept PayPal.